you, Trey, for that introduction. I think I actually kind of showed my cards with my slide here. I am an English teacher. I should have said probably thank a humanities teacher, because that's really the subject of my move talk, is that I think that design thinking has sort of drawn in the STEM education teachers, and it's left us humanities teachers, probably by our own design, out in the cold because we don't necessarily see the connection. And I think that's really a mistake. I started teaching, I don't know, 30 years ago, and analytical thinking was in vogue then. You know, we call it critical thinking now. But it was that idea that we are going to make observations, and we're going to look at the facts, and we're going to see biases and look at sources and cause and effect, and we're going to come together and find a solution. Design thinking, and that's a very logical approach, analytical thinking. Design thinking, in contrast, very different. You're going to ask questions, and you're going to try to understand your end user, and you are going to brainstorm in a million different directions. In fact, you are going to try to be illogical. I mean, forget about, simple things like gravity or money. There are no limitations with design thinking. So really, at heart, the analytical thinking is convergent. It brings it all together to a solution. And design thinking is divergent. It takes you in a million different directions. And, it sort of sounds like I'm pitching for design thinking, and I am, because I think we can use this in the humanities. But when you look at the definition on IDEO, design thinking is a deeply human process that taps into abilities we have but get overlooked by more conventional problem-solving practices. It relies on our ability to be intuitive, to recognize patterns, to construct ideas that are emotionally meaningful as well as functional, and to express ourselves through means beyond words or symbols. Right, but that's the language of the humanities classroom. I mean, where do we get these abilities? Where do we learn to be intuitive? Where do we recognize patterns? Where do we construct ideas and learn how our emotions can be meaningful and how we express ourselves? I mean, what the humanities classroom understands in a very convergent way is that there's only one story, just one story, and we tell it always and everywhere. And the story can have convergent components where we begin to understand what we have in common with other people. But it can also be a divergent story where it takes us in a whole new direction where we understand others. But all these stories, whether it's a musician playing his guitar, whether it's an artist painting on a palette, whether it's, a writer writing a novel, it's all about the same story, and that story is about ourselves. So whether it's convergent thinking, whether it's divergent thinking, the central thing that we need to be embodying is empathy. And we can tell our kids it's a noun, it's the ability to understand and share the feelings of others, but that doesn't mean that they actually understand how to be empathetic. I've been working with design thinking, and this is where I see it really begin to break down, is people aren't always naturally empathetic. You think about, I bet if I asked everybody out here, hasn't everybody here read To Kill a Mockingbird? Maybe at least you've seen the movie. And you remember that Atticus Finch, who is our principal father figure in our country, at least through the polls, he was trying to teach his daughter Scout one thing. And we all remember that quote. You never really understand a person until you consider things from his point of view, until you climb into his skin and walk around it. And little Scout was living in a world where there was tremendous convergent thinking around racial superiority and around the dynamics of power. And through the course of her father's learning, and through experiences that she had, when she walked Boo to his house and returned home, she said, I turned to go home. Street lights winked down the street all the way to town. I'd never seen our neighborhood from this angle. Now, it was probably literal for her, but it's also that she was now seeing things in a divergent way. She had really gone through the process of trying to embrace Socrates' dictum, know thyself. That was the process that she really had to go through. So that's one of the things that happens in the humanities classroom is how do we begin to not only know others, but how do we begin to know ourselves? One of the ways I do that in my classroom is I use this Johari window. This window is actually a heuristic tool that companies often use to help individuals in their company better understand themselves and understand others. I mean, you know, your team really has an advantage if you know yourself and you know the members of your team. So in the left-hand corner is the open area. That's the transparent. That's what you know about yourself and everybody else knows about you. In the right top corner is the blind area. That's your blind spots. That's what other people know about you, but you don't know about yourself. That is like the scariest square ever. Then this bottom left is hidden area. These are the things that people don't know about you, but you know about yourself. You just keep them hidden. And then on the right quadrant, that's the unknown area. You don't know it about yourself, and others don't know it about you. And there's a tremendous opportunity there for that to be insight, for potential to break that open. And in the humanities classroom, I have the opportunities. Of course, I wouldn't go in and say, hey, day one, let's start working this through on you. But but I do use this with characters in novels. So I might use it with going through with Scout. What were her blind spots that she was unable to see? And through the process of asking questions, what was she able to understand about herself? How was she able to make that smaller? And what was she hiding? Maybe we'll find out when Harper Lee's book comes out this summer, just what some of the things we're hiding. So I do this with my kids, and they just brainstorm through the whole process. And I hope through that, they do come to better understand themselves and better understand others. So I'm going to leave you with a quote from one of my favorite poets, Rumi's a 12th century Persian poet. And I hope this quote embraces what I want my classroom to be about, a place where I can engender empathy. Out beyond ideas of wrongdoing and right doing, there is a field. I'll meet you there. Thank you.